Okay, Leah is coming in. Do you, since you are the host, do you want Okay, so first, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 5:05. Stephanie just said she is trying to listen in. Okay, awesome. Glad
Yeah,
you're here.
I'm listening here, but I'm
Perfect.
just trying to multitask.
No worries. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first, let's do a roll call. If you could, I will start. This is Sarah Pesek.
This is Rajesh Kapilishwari.
Denise Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I heard Kira Williams.
Yes.
And then Denise Terry.
Amber Baker.
This is Stephanie Freed.
Allison Bowling.
Thea Lavin. And Helen Poplowski.
And I know that we'll have at least one other person joining us in the next 10 minutes or so. The review of the email vote. I just wanted to point out that we voted by email. What was that, in November? I think the second week.
End of October.
End of October, thank you. And we had almost unanimous vote. One person did not vote, but we had adjusted the language, just to remind everyone, we adjusted the language from the October, the resolution that we presented at the October City Council Subcommittee. Just to simplify it, we took a few things out of the main resolution completely. And then we also moved some things into the to the work plan, which is kind of where I want to take the discussion today. And then that resolution went back to the General Governments Committee, and it was voted on. Did they actually vote, or did they not need to vote? I can't remember the actual procedure, Helen, that they then moved it on to the full council.
Yes, so it was, they voted in the General Government Committee, and then from there it automatically moved to the November City Council meeting, where it became part of the consent agenda. And so the consent agenda and the general, I think it's called the general agenda. General agenda are items that are discussed individually. Consent just means they either are going to vote yes or no. Occasionally they will pull consent items in which that's the ones they want to discuss. Ours was not pulled, so it was part of the entire consent agenda, which was voted on. They voted through everything on that. So that's why if you watched it, it wasn't specifically named.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love if we could just take a few minutes, if anyone has gotten any feedback, like through their networks, or like through council members, like if you have a relationship with them or have heard anything as far as a response to that going through in the city council.
I actually would like to start off, if you don't mind. I did hear from some of our Duke Energy representatives who were able to share some information that I didn't know that they collected down to the city level for us. and they shared a one-pager breaking down where our current electricity generation comes from for the city of Winston-Salem. And it shows more than just the renewable energy sources. But for traditional renewable energy, we have some solar and some hydropower, and that makes up about 6.5% right now is where we're at. And so that was something that was shared, I think, later that week with us. So yeah, we did hear from Duke Energy. They were happy to see that we passed that. They reminded us of their goals. So yeah, we got some support from Duke Energy, which is great.
Mhm.
Quick question, Helen. Is that something that you can share? Because I would like to see what they have for 2025, 2030 goals, if they're on track.
Yeah, so it wasn't that detailed. It wasn't a full report. Like I said, it was just like a snapshot of currently where we're at.
Current.
And then again, it just repeated the 2030 and 2050 goals that you're already aware of. So it really wasn't any kind of insight into their plan. I am aware of their IRP process, their integrated resource plan process, and that's sort of where I've pulled some of my other information from around their goals, but that is independent of, this resolution.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to convince my neighbors and everybody to sign up for the Duke, whatever that is called, the renewable advantage, because the more people sign up, and it's about $9 to $12 a month extra, but the more people sign up, even individuals, the more they are mandated to buy solar or generate solar. So that way we can start making a push for market transformation. But we'll take thousands of people to do that, or a few big companies like or places like Wake Forest or the hospital or somebody. But yeah, it's exciting.
Rajesh, and maybe Leah too. Maybe you might know this, but Lee is having trouble getting in. Okay, I'll send him what I sent Allison. Do either of you know what Wake Forest's plan is with regards to that? Like, do they have a goal for renewable energy generation, but like purchasing?
Yeah, I'll get their updated report. But what I heard was they have already met the Paris Climate Accord goals of energy conservation compared to the 2005 baseline, and they're ahead of that particular goal. But they did not talk about, I don't remember seeing in their detailed where they're getting their power or if they're buying any renewable energy credits. So definitely I can ask Dee Dee Johnston, and she's PEA chair. So she has access to that and she can send it to us, but I will ask. I don't remember seeing it last time. I was just excited that they had met the Paris Climate Accord already.
Yeah. Has anyone else had feedback from the resolution that was passed that they want to share?
The only thing I was surprised was none of the media covered it. And so I ended up writing a letter to editor kind of format saying, hey, this got passed, because I waited for a week and nobody covered it. So
I think that was because it was part of the consent agenda. So
yeah, because previously they covered when there was a pushback and it looked bad, but when there was a positive thing, where is it? So I'd love to get more people to talk about it, because it's kind of a happy thing, a beginning of a process. So no, I haven't heard back from any council members either. I reached out to them just yesterday saying, guys, any comments, anything, any direction? But a couple of things that I remember from the meetings that we had where we discussed the resolution. One was vehicles came up quite a bit, and from Larson, I think. And the second thing that came up was from Councilmember Clark, that he was looking for specifics. He said something like, is this a feel-good resolution, or will there be a request for money, like give me a couple $1 million to do LED? Some statement like that had come up. So those are the two things that I jotted down at that point, that maybe that's the direction.
Yeah, and to comment, Rajesh, on the request from Clark, that's something my office is going to get him. We're planning on submitting that to the Finance Committee at the January meeting as an information item. We had provided them a Thursday update, so our council members get weekly updates, and we put some information in there, but I think that may also have slipped under the radar of a couple people. So we're going to do that in January. So we are planning on getting him that information, just so you guys are aware, and that will be streetlights and LEDs and general energy efficiency information for our facilities.
And did you hear back on your request to the Winston-Salem Journal to publish an article?
Yes, they did publish it on Saturday. My op-ed, basically describing the process we went through and what the resolution means and what direction we are going. So I can send it to everybody, but that part, I contacted them and I told them, hey, this got passed. Do you want to cover it? And I also contacted WFDD. But I think there's so much going on in the news that they did not have the bandwidth to cover it. So that's why I wrote that op-ed, to get it in front of the public, whoever it is. But yeah, I mean, the more people talk about it, the better. And I would love to call David Ford at WFDD and say, interview Sarah Pesek or Helen or somebody, or Johnny, to talk about this, because it's...
Well, Sarah, you have some inroads at WFDD, no?
Yeah, I do. And I have not actually talked to them about this specific subject, but Leah and I were part of a project I guess it's December, 2 months ago. It was a fundraiser for Imprints Cares to try to get as many needy, like low-income kids who don't have safe spaces or parents at home during the shutdown, or don't have internet access. Like there's so many challenges families are facing. And we, as a team, plus plenty of donors, raised I don't know what the last number was, Leah, maybe $206,000. And that is such a feel-good story. And there's so many more kids who have now free access to these learning centers, and I couldn't get it covered. And I think it's because, well, one, the paper, which we do subscribe to, the paper has laid off so many reporters, and the WFDD has been so busy with election coverage. Now we're after the election, but there's still plenty of residual conversation that I think they're just focusing on. They're not necessarily focusing on the feel-good story. So like this, what we're talking about right now is like, yay, this is an awesome thing that the city's done, like with this committee and with the city council. And I'm just not sure, but I will try. I will try again with WFDD, but they did not have the bandwidth to cover the Imprints Cares news, which is a bummer.
I think Sierra Club and PEA has a news article in their monthly, whatever, a newsletter. And they
sent that out too. Like people who were on their newsletter, like I got an email about it being from, I think it was PEA's email that said, hey, look, this passed in the city council. So they are doing that, like you say.
And Sierra Club from Raleigh, the person from Raleigh contacted me and got me to give him one statement. So basically we said, well, thanks for the leadership and of City of Winston-Salem, and we are moving ahead. So those guys from Raleigh, I don't know who that that letter goes to, but they got something. And then all the local guys who helped us put the resolution together, they were going to talk about it to their members and also write letters to editor. So there is some movement, but not by the mainstream folks.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's, I don't want to stop if people have other questions or comments regarding the resolution. Actually, speak now or we're going to move on. Okay. So the part that I think is most exciting about this meeting is, I know we have just a couple weeks till Christmas and life gets crazy. Hopefully no one's actually traveling anywhere. I know I'm not. I'm going to sit with my 2 family members at home, but I would love if we could commit to breaking down into these small groups like we discussed last year. And, you know, one of those small groups is what Rajesh was working on with the language for this resolution. And so that has come to fruition. But there were a number of other things that people were interested in this committee, as well as, you know, good support from city council members, particularly around the green jobs and equity. And I think we want to give that the attention that it's due. And I think that we could get a lot of, I think there's opportunities for a lot of collaborations, like between, you know, the individuals on this group, but then I also know there's so many other organizations in town that also are really working on this. And even if it's just starting a conversation, I think that would be really valuable. And I'll just remind you, I mentioned it earlier, but we moved some of that language out of the resolution because it was kind of made the resolution go off in several different directions. And, but we did, yeah, go ahead. Did someone say something? No. So we want to move it into the work plan, but not lose it. Like, we don't want it to get stuck down in the work plan and not have regular check-ins. So I wonder if there's anyone who has thought about this as like a subgroup that they would like to be part of, and if someone would like to lead that subgroup and kind of help convene it. I would love to hear from you.
I'm interested in working with green jobs and whatever revolves around that. I, of course, have mentioned before that I'm green myself. I don't really know a whole lot about what's going on. I'm learning, but I would like to, that's something I can kind of wrap myself around. I can understand that. So yeah, I don't really want to head it up. I don't think that, and maybe I might need to if there's no one else, but not really interested in heading it up, but interested in participating and helping out. So
awesome.
Put that out there.
Thank you, Denise. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I would enjoy being a part of it also.
Thank you, Leah. I would also just add in that I've had some good preliminary conversations with some other people in town who are interested in, like, even just kind of having a Zoom call and talk about, like, we're doing this and we're doing that. And the person I'm thinking of that I spoke with most recently, she is focused on spatial, I think the word she said is spatial justice, which actually I admit is not a word that I was familiar with before. I mean, I know like environmental justice, but like the use of space, of course, there are justice issues around that.
Is that Elise?
Sorry?
Is that Elise?
No, it was, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on her name. She works for Wake Downtown or the Innovation Quarter.
Cool, cool. I just interesting that term is being thrown around quite a bit in town, I think, because of that spatial justice institute. So I was curious. Sorry,
Stephanie. How are people talking about it? You know, like, what are you hearing
on campus? I mean, I'm not hearing a lot because I'm hearing a lot of toddler right now. But sorry. Can I chime in a minute when we get back in the house?
Totally fine.
But I have thoughts on this. I
have a comment.
Okay. What?
I did go to an information session sometime back, maybe last year. When they first started talking about it. And I just want to say, from a different perspective, because I live on the east side and I, of course, associate with a lot of people who are at a disadvantage in a lot of ways. I'll just say it sounded like another way to phrase, what's the term? And the term got away from me. Where they're moving into the community. I lost the term that we use.
Yeah.
Gentrification.
Yes, another term for making gentrification sound pretty. I just want to put that out there, that was a response that kind of was generally popping up.
Okay.
Well, and also the work around spatial justice also deals with how the resources in the inner city corridor is not adequate in a sense that your jobs and your better homes and stuff are in the suburban areas. And so people who are living in the inner corridor or your inner city does not have adequate resources and transportation to access some of your higher paying jobs. And it also deals with how development occurs without any consideration for the folks that have been living there but have not adequately been a part of the development or the funding of development in the area. So like with the downtown area, in the East Winston area, those areas have been a blight area for so long with the residents who actually were living there calling for, development and funding. And now that those are targeted areas, like Denise said, and they're being gentrified, they're being done without any consideration for the people that have been living there. So it has to do with development issues, yes. It also has to do with accessibility for people who want to access higher paying jobs that are around the corridor, like in your suburban areas, and how once people started moving into the suburb area, they had access to cars. So your public transportation is not developed enough for people to be able to access that. So gentrification is a part of it, but it really just talks about the inequities that exist in these not only living spaces, but employment spaces and transportation spaces as well.
Thank you so much for sharing, Amber. Sorry, I already apologized to everyone that I'm hiding in my bedroom because there's too many people in my house and my dog is like stealing my shoes. So Amber, you may know this better than anyone else actually, but like what city offices or community groups are actually really working on that? I mean, does it come into play with zoning? Like the city zoning commission? Does it, do you see what I'm asking?
So I became aware of it through some community presentations. And I don't know that there is any governmental agency that is tackling this. I think, this is a part of those kind of community conversations around how we're kind of having more formal conversations around what is the city's sustainability plan. These are more like informal conversations that's starting to get some traction around what do we need to do about it. So I don't think that this is actually following under anybody's like policy making purview. I think it's more about, again, community conversations. I know there's a lot of pushback around WAKE right now with them being what is called an anchor institution in our city. And by that meaning, they are one of the top employers in the city. And, what are they doing about being better partners with the city and in terms of creating accessibility for people to access upward mobility. So in all honesty, I don't think that there's any one agency that has taken this on. And like I said, I've just kind of been a part of these conversations in the community. And it was a really good presentation. And I don't know if this is the one you were at, Denise, but it was at the church on Summit.
I went to the one at the Enterprise Center.
Were you there? Was that the one you were at, Denise?
I went to the Enterprise Center. They had a presentation at the Enterprise Center.
No, this one was at the church on Summit Avenue, the really big church.
I was there. Yeah, I was
You were there? You were there?
Yeah.
And so he really kind of did a really good, because this is the work that he does. Like, he kind of did a really good historical kind of presentation of how we got there, and and how we built up these suburban corridors without creating access for people who were kind of stuck in the inner city to be able to get out and access it. You may want to check with Terry.
Amber, you broke up a little bit there.
Yeah. So she would be a good person to possibly reach out and may be more in touch or more connected to the movement in a way that I'm not. I just know kind of information.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who you were referring to. What was that person's name?
Terry LeGrand.
Oh, Terry. Okay, sorry. I got cut off for a second. Okay.
Yeah. That was actually a part of her platform as she was running for office. So I do know that is an area that is of keen interest for her.
Okay. Thank you. So just to round out the green jobs piece, Leah and Denise said they're interested in that. Is there anyone else? I mean, I'm happy to also join in on that. Is there anyone else who would like to?
I don't feel qualified for saying much or giving ideas, but I'm always happy to participate and brainstorm, and I read a lot, but for whatever it's worth, if you have 3 or 4 people, I'm glad to sit out on this part. This is not my forte, but if you need me, please, by all means, call me and I'll be happy.
I feel like what we could do in the next few weeks is to just reach out to some of the community groups we're involved with, and just to kind of create, like a map of just like a brain. I'm thinking of like what you did in elementary school, where you have like this brainstorming sheet where it's like, okay, who are the different people who are already doing this? Like, we don't need to recreate work that is already being done, but just for our edification. And, if it's helpful to Helen and Johnny to just kind of do a little bit more thorough conversation so that we are aware of the things that are already being done, and maybe identify areas that, maybe there's a nonprofit in town, like, Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods. Like,
I was getting ready to say, Sarah, you may want to reach out to Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods, because, they do a lot of asset mapping.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so some of this work has already been done, may have already been done. So we don't have to really start from ground zero. We can probably build out. And I know that they are always wanting to do that work in the community. So as we kind of hammer out what we need, they would probably be a good partnering agent. But I know that they do a lot of asset mapping in communities. And so they may have some of that information available for us already.
Yeah, we were thinking the same thing, Amber. So one of the cities that I worked in before in Syracuse, they actually had a city geographer, and she focused on like this kind of like, where is the tree cover in the city? Where are the food deserts in the city? And so she focused on like community geographical assets.
We have those maps also. I would recommend going to Map for Sites. So they are a city-county organization, and they have done a lot of mapping. Not so much on the tree canopy to a huge extent, but I do know that they have a food desert map, some community assets, which, you know, those are the libraries, the schools, the gardens, etc. So Map for Sites would be a good place to look also. I don't know how frequently they update the maps, but still that could be a good place to start.
Great. I'll put it in the chat. I just found it.
Hey, Sarah, this is Stephanie chiming in again. Now that I've put the child in front of the screen to sit, it's hopefully quality television. So I was really interested in following up on the recycling campaign stuff that we had talked about last year. And I just wanted to express that interest and trying to kind of do something more like not more practical, but like something like that I can wrap my head around on a smaller scale. And so I know that the recycling contamination was something that we had discussed talking about more. And I was curious if that was something that other people were still interested in working on.
Helen and Johnny, is that still a need?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I would definitely be interested in doing a recycling campaign for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's partly personal, and so I'm kind of interested in thinking about it. Like, I have a really hard time recycling correctly, and I care about recycling correctly. So I'm trying to think about it from so are we trying to create something like a campaign where we're telling people like how to recycle correctly, and is it that we're trying to gather information on what's going wrong so that the city can make a campaign? So you see those two different approaches? That's the question.
I think when we talk about recycling, there are two avenues we need to travel on. One is to encourage more participation, but the second piece is to educate our residency on the proper way to recycle, and also be able to demonstrate the negative impacts of not having a clean recycling stream. So when I got involved with recycling many years ago, we had a dual stream system where we sorted items. And then we went to a co-mingle system, which we have now. And one of the challenges that we face is because we export a great deal of recyclables, and particularly toward China, some of their policies have changed, and now what was considered a clean pile several years ago is now considered contamination. So what we need to focus on is, one, participation, but two, also education from the standpoint of explaining the benefits of a clean stream and the negative impacts of not having one.
So, John, can I ask a question real quick? So you mean if we recycle, we don't actually recycle here? We bundle our recyclables and send them off somewhere?
Well, what happens is the markets dictate where the recyclables go. And so pretty much what we have, our program, we don't carry out the processing function. That's carried out by the contractor. And so the contractor will shop those commodities on the open market. So while I mentioned China, that all recyclables go to China, that's not the case. It's just that a great deal of recyclables throughout the entire country were exported over into that region.
And so when they send them over there, it's for the purpose of them actually repurposing that?
Yes. And How the market,
They take,
excuse me, I'm sorry.
So I guess I'm asking, so say China is one of the processing sites for certain types of plastic. And so we create the bundling, we send it to China, and then they melt it down or whatever, and that's what they do?
That happens, yes.
Okay.
And so the purpose of that is to reuse those materials, and the market drives the revenues that are generated from the sales of commodities. Because sometimes it almost is, from an economic standpoint, from those folks, it is more feasible for them to use virgin material. Now, we know that what we're trying to do is minimize the use of virgin materials. We want to reduce. First of all, we need to reuse and recycle. So that's kind of the thought behind that. Yes.
So I just learned something. I didn't realize that. I thought that, and maybe others are thinking the same way. I don't know. I thought when we recycled, they came, picked it up. When they took it to the recycle center, it was sorted, and that we did our own repurposing. So that might be good for people to know, to be able to understand that. So I think I didn't know it, and I'm a huge recycler.
Yeah, I was thinking, Johnny, it might be interesting to maybe to talk about the process, because you said it, I think that you were going up for a new contract with to bid for the city.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So maybe this would be a good time to maybe make this public conversation about how recycling actually happens in the city, which I think is really interesting, right? Like what you're that's a really interesting process. People don't think of recycling as a marketplace, I don't think. Because it's like we're doing this good thing, but maybe we need maybe changing that attitude would make people more likely to recycle better. Sorry, if that makes sense. So but what does that look like to you? Does that look like an audio clip, or so that's what I'm trying to get at. Like what
video
make?
We've done PSAs over the years that are kind of a combination. We've done videos, we've done TV ads, we've done radio, we've done, so of course, even right now, the Office of Sustainability sends out information on the proper ways to recycle, and we participate in campaigns. So we're trying to use every area of media to get the word out. But it's a continuous effort that's needed. It's not something that we just do this week and we let it go. It needs to continually take place.
So my day job, I'm a packaging developer. So this is right up my alley, because we are just constantly talking about mixed materials and how to recycle. And I think a lot of people don't understand that when you have a package like a coffee creamer, for example, but I cite this specifically because this is one that I learned about recently, you actually have to remove the plastic label from the bottle in order for it to enter the recycle stream. So there's a lot of ins and outs of recycling, and the company that I work for is a global corrugated manufacturer, and we recently partnered with Domino's Pizza to launch a big recycling initiative about which municipalities accept pizza boxes in the recycling stream. And we funded that study in collaboration with the Fiber Box Association to prove that, in fact, pizza boxes are recyclable. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate, not only professionally with my organization, but just in general with end users, so community members and education for recycling. There's a ton of precedent from other municipalities, and I've seen recyclopedias, which consumers can scan a barcode using an app that's kind of provided by the city, and they can scan a barcode on a product and determine whether or not that's recyclable within the city's recycle stream. So tons of opportunity in that space, I think.
Yeah.
Could I suggest, for the sake of time, that like Stephanie and Allison both said that they're interested in this. Can I suggest that you guys get with Helen and Johnny, because then you can see what is already being done, because Helen's got a bunch of programs and website, and they just finished a campaign at some point in the last year. I don't remember when it was, but I know there's things that she's already been doing. And then you guys can take that little subcommittee and kind of run with it, if you're good with that.
And also, quickly on the topic of subcommittees, I just have some information for everyone, and I'll try to do this quickly. So there are official subcommittees and ad hoc subcommittees. So when you're forming these committees, ad hoc is just expecting it to end at some point in the future. The regular subcommittees are stuff that will subcommittees that will continue on even after all of you rotate off. So keep that in mind when you're creating these subcommittees. And then additionally, I, as a staff support, need to be present at each subcommittee meeting. So those are just some of the things that the city has set up for subcommittees. So keep that in mind when you're forming these.
Helen, quick question. So if we are abiding by the public meeting rule, it has to be 6 people or less.
Yeah, it has to be less than 6.
5 people or less.
Yes.
Okay. And that may or may not be an official subcommittee meeting, though.
So this is where it gets a little dicey, and I am working on getting all of the exact legal information, but you can still form an official subcommittee with a minority, like a small group of people. So even if there are only 2 or 3 people, that can still become an official subcommittee. So I think that right now what we're talking about, it sounds like more ad hoc to me. And I don't know if that changes any of the official rules or not. Like I said, this is something I've just started digging into this week. So again, I'm working with our legal department to really flesh out these exact rules, but the one that I am sure about is that I will need to be present at them and that they are still committee meetings. But the degree of openness, I guess, in terms that this one is, I'm still working on, if that makes sense. So.
This is
hello. Yes, Lee, do you want to say something, Lee?
I guess I want to volunteer, but I'm a little hesitant too. And I guess the reason I'm hesitant is because when I'm looking at the whole picture of whether it's working with Duke and them in terms of sustainability, or whether it's working with solar paneling or green jobs, or whether it's working with, I don't know, planting trees or recycling. There's an equity piece in each of those that I hope we would consider regardless, that those in each of those categories, that those communities that may be overlooked aren't overlooked and addressed appropriately. So I guess the committee I'm joining is equity, but at the same time, I hope that the equity committee isn't just isolated on just, I guess, I'm not sure exactly, but I think there's an equity piece in each of those areas that has to be addressed.
I agree. And I mean, if we had more time, and especially if we were in person and could do like a whole day of like a retreat, like that would be the perfect time to create like a list of missions and overarching principles. And I feel personally that equity would be at the top of that list of overarching principles, short of having like a formalized mission statement. I think if we all are intentional about making sure that that is at the forefront of what we're doing, and then also if anyone thinks we're not doing that well, then you need to speak up and say, hey, what about, like, have we considered, you know, the equitable distribution of, you know, whatever we're discussing? I think that's really important. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So what are you volunteering for, Lee?
Equity, I guess.
Equity.
Okay. All right, good. I just didn't want you to get off the hook.
Sarah, I had a quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, right?
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to make sure that the Canopy study is still in there. I know Dane and I had spoken about heading that up.
Yes, and Dane is stuck in a faculty meeting, but he wanted me to mention that he's still really interested in pursuing that. So, so I will also, so if you and Dane can connect, and I'll follow up with an email with him. And is there anyone else who was still interested in, okay, so tree canopy assessment is part of her Helen's sustainability plan. So maybe Kira, if you and Dane can connect with Helen and see if there's any other potential, ways that the group can help Helen in the part of the plan that she's already doing. Would that be helpful, Helen?
Yes, it's part of my plan, but that's as far as I've gotten. So,
okay. Well, good. Okay. So so it sounds like Kira and Dane and Helen can chat. I do not know anything about that, so I'm not going to volunteer.
Well, the only thing I would like to say about tree canopy assessment is beyond assessment is trying to tighten up the tree ordinance so that we don't lose as many trees.
Yes. And so that was the point of me adding it into the plan, is because there's no way, as far as I can tell, that they're measuring the current policy for the tree canopy. And so if we're able to measure the tree canopy and then able to point out where we're not that policy is working, or like how effective it is, I think that'll boost our argument. I also think it'll help with Community Roots Day. So we'll be able to see the trees that they plant, where they're going, how they're helping to assess the tree canopy. So yeah, I expect it'll help us in a lot of different ways. And that's why I put that in my plan, because I think that needs to be done fairly soon, since I don't ever has really. So.
Right. Okay.
And also, Dane, remember Dane said that he teaches a class on this and could make his students, for lack of a better word, do
well, let me tell you, I was a student of Dane's. He's going to make them, believe me.
Yeah, and I think Dane's also mentioned potentially working with other universities with similar
with Winston-Salem State and Wake Forest to get them on board, because it's an ecology class, so that's one of the assignments that every ecology student has to do. So, is the assignment having to do with canopy mapping, Kira? I'm sorry? Does the assignment have to do with canopy mapping? Yes. Every year they find a location where it needs to be studied. And for the past several years, it has been the, Pilot Mountain, because of the unprescribed burns. So they do a canopy study there just to get it completed as an assignment for graduation. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 8 minutes. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir. So, how long are our terms? Sarah mentioned about the standing committees versus the ad hoc committee.
Yes.
How long are our terms?
So everybody's term length is on the city website. So if you go to the home page, the government tab, I believe it's the first link will be about advisory boards and committees, and then you can find the sustainability program committee, and that lists when everybody rotates off. So normally everyone is on for a 2-year period. However, because we just started this committee, some of you will rotate off in June of 2021, and some will rotate off in 2022. So some of you do have a 3-year term, just so we can start off the rotation, so we don't have a full new committee every time. So I don't know off the top of my head who is rotating off when, but yes, if you wanted to email me tomorrow or later this evening, I can send you that link if you are not able to find it.
I'll just look it. I'm just trying to map out kind of my commitment.
Yes, good question. I appreciate that.
Okay, for this, yes, Jeff.
Sarah Stackhouse again.
Okay.
Just a quick question and maybe just information purposes. Have we discussed at all E85 in addition to electric cars? E85 being flex hybrid cars, which also can take us away from, that big carbon footprint.
I don't think we've discussed it in this group.
No, we haven't, but that leads to we do want a transportation group as well to study some of the work plans for transportation.
Okay.
Sarah, I was just going to say that ad hoc committee versus subcommittees. My thought was that we should just have sort of an informal group of people gathering. So I guess it's ad hoc, just to get some work plan going. Mm-hmm. And once we have a preliminary work plan going, then we can decide whether it merits being a formal subcommittee that needs more work. Like equity might be that formal subcommittee, but ad hoc was what I was thinking, just to get information on our work plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's helpful to think about after we roll off, like, is it a structure that we want to have in place or not? And I think for now, the subcommittee, the ad hoc makes sense for sure.
And Raj, to your point about the work plan, I'm glad you brought that up. Some examples that I've looked at from other committees here in Winston who do have subcommittees, both ad hoc and ongoing subcommittees, what they do is in their work plan, so all of the goals are listed in the work plan, but then the specific subcommittee is written out next to it. So that way, each subcommittee still has their goals and it's part of the full work plan of this sustainability committee, if that makes sense. So I can send out examples if you want to see, because it's done a couple different ways depending on the ones that I've seen. So if that will help you, I'm happy to send those examples out.
So Rajesh, you mentioned transportation. Is that something that you are interested in working on?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in. Transportation was brought up by a couple of council members.
Yeah, I know Dan Bessie has brought that up several times.
Dan Bessie, who's no longer on the I guess he's not a council member going forward since starting January, but he and Larson brought up electric vehicles and moving away from fossil fuel vehicles. So yeah, I mean, if anybody feels like they can take it up, please go ahead. If not, I'm willing to read up and try to come up with what we can do and look at other cities, what they've done. For example, Greensboro went to changed all the buses to battery operated. And I know Johnny and I had a conversation about it to see whether they are reliable or not. That study needs to happen, I guess, or somebody needs to contact Greensboro. But yeah.
Yeah, I know who did that in Greensboro. So if you do want that information, I think I've heard just anecdotally that there has been some obstacles, but I don't know in detail beyond that.
Is there anyone else who would be interested in working on transportation?
Yes, I would.
Great, awesome.
Stackhouse.
Okay. Okay, so right now we have green jobs, equity, recycling, tree canopy, and transportation. And can I encourage you to try to get something on the books for even just a preliminary discussion in the next few weeks so that you guys get some momentum? Yeah.
Quick question, food access, yeah. Where would that fall? I would say land use is tree. I mean, land use and trees go together, I suppose. Food go under land use because I know Dane is interested in that one too.
So also food, we have actually the Urban Food Policy Council. So we have an entire council dedicated to food access, food insecurity, things like that. We have a staff member dedicated to working with the Think Orange campaign. I can't remember what her official title is, but she's also working on that. So if you want to go look at some of their agendas or past meetings to give you an idea, because there is a group that is already working on some of the more food related stuff in the city. And I just don't want to have to, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't know what they're doing exactly. So I would recommend starting there.
And I know Denise has mentioned before that she's really interested, that you're really interested in food and urban gardens. And I have watched the YouTube videos of that food committee, those meetings before. And so even just watching one gives you kind of a sense of the different areas that they're working in, whether it's like farmers markets, things like that. I mean, this is one example, but so yeah, let's keep that in our mind. And if people who are really interested in the food stuff, we can touch base afterwards. My husband also teaches a food politics class. His presentation, his students are actually presenting right now, like from 5 to 6. So I'm missing the presentations, but I also can send you what the students have done. They always choose a community project and then work for a semester on it. And the food forest down in, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what street it's on. It was one of the projects this time. But anyway,
Arcadia.
Thank you, Arcadia, yeah. So at 6 o'clock, I failed to ask to approve the minutes. So can we do that quickly? Does anyone move to approve the minutes from October?
Actually, I had a couple quick changes that I let Helen know. One was to remove one word, and one was to substitute Sierra Club with Climate Change Lobby, I guess, or CCL. That's about it. And Helen knows what those two little changes are, right, Helen?
Yes, I made them. I just did not send them out yet. So I can send those out after if those changes are approved by everybody. So we're on the same page. And then also, just so you know, I'm uploading all of the approved minutes to the city's website as well for future reference.
Okay. So then do we still need to approve it now if you're sending a follow-up?
You can, yeah, just because he mentioned what the changes were, I think it's okay to approve it.
Okay. Okay, Leah, did you vote to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Lee seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you all for being here. You are each charged with connecting with your subgroups, and preferably in the next 2 weeks before the break, so that you can mull over ideas and let that stuff marinate before we are not attentive to it over the holidays.
Sarah.
And if you decide to meet to talk about stuff, let me know so I can be there.
Thanks,
Sarah.
Ellen. Yep.
Sarah, will you email the list of all the names and subgroups and maybe the email addresses?
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
We won't have the minutes yet, but I will at least send out what people committed to. So they won't be the
You can always watch this live on YouTube.
Hey,
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you all. The meeting is adjourned.
all right. Thank you.
Bye, Helen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good holidays to
You
everyone.